Hello and welcome to Why Your Old Content Isn't Working with Modern Learners and How to Fix It. In this session, you will learn why your legacy content could be failing your new and existing learners, what new learning and content standards have entered the L&D landscape, and how to provide fresh, relevant content to your users, and more. With us today is Patrick Martin, Head of Learning and Support with Docebo. Patrick is responsible for ensuring the continued success of clients through their LMS implementation and beyond. He knows the ingredients of great e-learning content and strives to make customer success a daily responsibility.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mel, for the introduction, and certainly wanted to give a brief thank you to everybody for coming out today, and also thank you to eLearning Industries for organizing this for us. Today's presentation, as Melissa said, is about e-learning trends and how to modernize your content. I just wanted to say a brief thing about kind of my job and my experience in the industry. I do work with typically corporations, so I did notice how Monty was in education. I haven't looked at a lot of content specific to education, so I'm not sure exactly how much of this is going to be relevant for that, but I will say that content in general is kind of common. So I've looked at a lot of content from a lot of organizations and certainly hope to help you guys out in terms of creating new and modern content for you all. Another quick thing to mention before we kind of get into the swing of things, if you have particular questions about particular content, what I would suggest is to try to include the slide number. So if you have a question about slide 20, let me know so that I can go to it when I answer your question and allow for others to kind of have that same type of information readily available. Before we got started, I wanted to also do a quick poll to understand who I'm speaking with. I see a lot of various people from all over the world, which is great to see, but I want to get an understanding of exactly who I'm speaking to. So I'm going to give you guys about 30 seconds to answer this poll, and then we will continue with our slides. All right. Perfect. Thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and move along now. So first, I wanted to give you guys a brief introduction about Docebo. Docebo actually started as an LMS in 2005. It's actually transferred to more of a learning ecosystem, or a learning suite is what we like to refer to it as. We'll talk more about this throughout the presentation and about the differences between a learning management system versus a learning platform and why we might need a transition from one to another. Docebo is a global organization. The Athens office, which is where I'm located, started in 2012. We've expanded into Canada and London since then, and we're looking to expand into Germany and Singapore moving forward. I want to get through these as briefly as possible. Some of our recent awards from last year, since I've been at Docebo, which has been 2.5 years, we've received numerous awards. I'm not going to put them all up here, but wanted to just go through those quickly. Lastly, in terms of who we deliver or who we serve, this is the breakdown of how our clients are using our product. And then lastly, the different components of our learning ecosystem. We've got the formal portion of Docebo, which is the LMS component. Then we have informal and social learning, which is what we like to refer to as coach and share. We have skills management, which is Docebo Perform, and then extended enterprise, which is what we like to refer to as multi-domain. If you're in the e-learning industry, you're probably familiar with a lot of these different concepts, and certainly Docebo is proud to have these different components. So let's get to why we're here today. We're here to talk about content and basically taking advantage of some of the work that Docebo has done. Ultimately, we've done a significant amount of research to understand where the market is going, and it's pretty impressive. I'm impressed with Docebo's ability to break into the market and gain market traction despite it being predominantly dominated by these legacy platforms that you might have heard of. The goal for you as a listener is to help determine some action items that you can do in order to improve your content, improve engagement with your learners, and get that positive feedback that you're looking for. So the traditional LMS is kind of where I'll start with here. The concept of an LMS is that we take content, we push it down to users. It's a top-down type of mindset. It's passive, and it creates unengaged learners. With modern learning, what we need to do is it allows for learners to actually be engaged, and it ensures retention. If you give the ability for learners to discuss what they're talking about, for instance, it's going to have that positive reinforcement and also generate more questions. You want people to be talking. You don't want somebody to simply go into your content and then leave and forget about it 30 seconds later. We want to have that reinforcement through conversation, that reinforcement through whether or not it's testing. There's very different ways to enforce that, but ultimately what we want to do is ensure that our learners are engaged, and it's becoming increasingly difficult in the modern world. You've got learners who might have a cell phone readily available. You've got ads popping up every 30 seconds if you go to different websites. There's a lot of different distractions that exist, but we still need to deliver this content. And how do we ensure that? Oops, the arrow does not work. I need to click. So we might be thinking, okay, this is kind of great, but wait a second. We've always been humans. We've been the same way. This is not necessarily true. We did some research, and certainly I did a little bit of double checking this morning. I wanted to bring some additional points to the table. Ultimately, the brain is the same, but how we're socialized is entirely different. Specific to something that I read early this morning, if you live in a place that's, let's say, detached from the modern world, you're in an isolated area, let's say a village in a third world country, you don't have the exposure to technology, your brain actually behaves differently. Your neural pathing is different. You don't have the same need to learn things. I don't want to say you're complacent, but your mindset is certainly different than that of, let's say, a modern learner. So here we've got a great infographic by Berzin, who's kind of an industry leader in terms of research and providing information. On the left side, you see the struggle that content has to compete with, basically distractions. You've got all these different items. I'm not sure if you can read them all. I might want to highlight a couple of them, but basically nobody's going to watch a video that's over 4 minutes long, and if you don't engage somebody within 5 to 10 seconds, you're probably going to skip on to something else. On the right side is how we're going to combat this. Okay? We need to ensure that users can access their content when they want it. Hey, I don't know how to install a router, for instance. I don't know how to do something. Let me quickly look up how to do that. It's on demand. The collaborative aspect of it. If I'm looking at something, I want to be able to say, oh, I got a cool question. Let me see how I can get a better response and learn a little bit more about this. And then lastly, we want to make sure that our learners are empowered. Here's an interesting bit of information from Brandon Hall, also another industry leader. So what they did here is they asked corporations kind of how their content is, the breakdown of priorities. Again, most of this is centered around corporate, so apologies for the educational sector. I know you guys are important. Not going to read through all these, but I'm just going to leave it up for just a brief moment. This is what corporations are looking to do in coming years, specific, I guess, 2008, these initiatives and making their content better. So it sounds great on paper. Let's just start up these initiatives. Let's create informal and social learning. But how can we ensure that it actually happens? Right now, it doesn't seem like it is happening. And this is the real conundrum. You have all these companies who said, I want to increase the amount of informal learning. I want to create more gamification for my business. Yet, in 2017, we had more formal content created than in 2016. SCORM is a content standard, for those who may not know, and that's a very formal portion of content. Somebody goes into a course, I've got a SCORM package that could be applicable to many different organizations. There's a lot of SCORM content that's actually purchased through content providers like Open Sesame or Lynda. And so the content that you deliver with your SCORM package, a different institution might use that same exact package that you're using. That is very formal. That's not something that's unique to your business. It's rather, it's a formal learning object. And what happens with that formal learning, oh, my apologies, I forgot to mention something. So in regards to in regards to mobile content, we've got an issue with mobile content. That's something that's huge in modern learners. I mentioned the cell phone earlier. We want our learners to use devices that are natural to them. The problem is that 35% of learners, they can't actually use their content how they want. You create a SCORM package, that SCORM package has a 35% chance of not working on a mobile device. How can we combat that? We need to be thinking about mobile in two manners. We need to make sure that it's mobile friendly, and we need to make sure that the mobile development is not an afterthought. We've got some information here from Josh, who gave us that great infographic earlier. Ultimately, when it comes down to content, if you're generating content for your users and they can't quickly gain what they're looking to do, for instance, this YouTube is how to replace a control valve on a log splitter. If I need to know that and that's a part of your business, I go into your learning management system or your learning platform and I can't find it, where am I going to go? I'm going to go to the interweb, or to the internet. Excuse me. I'm going to find this information readily on there, and I don't necessarily need to use your platform. What happens then? Then I have negative reinforcement. The next time I have an issue, I'm going to be like, I don't know if I want to go to that. I'm just going to go to the internet and get my answer a little bit quicker. I've seen both sides of the equation in terms of content not being mobile friendly and also the mobile development not being fully fledged in terms of a learning ecosystem. Docebo is actually remodeling our mobile app based on feedback. We're taking that feedback and we're making sure that users are going to be more engaged by ensuring a more responsive mobile application. So this is a little bit more about how an LMS might differ from a learning ecosystem. Ultimately, the LMS is formal content. That is the sole purpose of an LMS, is to distribute formal content using a content delivery network, a CDN, and being able to run reports on this content. The problem is modern learning requires a variety of content. We can't just have formal content. People need to be able to collaborate. People need to be able to have it on demand, as we mentioned in that infographic from Josh. So that being said, I'm a little curious. How's our audience doing here? What type of content are you using? Again, we'll give it 30 seconds. Allow me to take a drink. Perfect. Thanks for getting back to that quick. So we've got some interesting information here. I'm actually going to leave this up for just a moment, Melissa, if you could. Ultimately, we have a lot of, I guess, not necessarily dated content, but somewhat. Videos are seemingly modern. It's something that we're certainly looking to push. In the past, it was, a VHS video that you sat in a formal training room, whether or not it's an ILT, something along those lines. It's still a little bit dated technology. Games and simulation, that's something that's very new and emerging, right? and then learner-generated content. That's that informal learning that we're looking to really pursue at Docebo with our Coach and Share app. So I'm excited to see that people are going into that spectrum of content, but it's also very clear that it's still predominantly dominated by, the standards, the SCORMs, the tin cans, and the AICC. So in terms of corporations today, this is their breakdown. It's somewhat similar to what you just saw. The only thing is the simulation side with our poll was a little bit lower, but ultimately 86% of companies are going to be using PDFs. 92 are using PowerPoint. 84% video, and I'm not going to read the rest. Despite the desire to lead that modern push, you've got a predominant 92% using PowerPoint. Seems a little odd, right? So in the past, companies, all they needed was content, right? We had a formal learning management system, and that's all you really needed to do. Now we need a suite of features based on our unique learners. We need to have content that's delivered by role, delivered by location, delivered based on how somebody's looking to develop. We also need to have social content. We need to have discussions, recommendations. And most importantly, we need to make sure that mobile is up and running. People need to have access to things on the run. I'm at a job site. I can't drive back to the office to get the information that I need. I can't make another call to somebody to get that information because that's consuming 2 resources. You have to think in the future and how we're going to utilize this modern content for our modern learners. So here's an additional breakdown of kind of how an LMS is different from a learning platform, which is what Docebo is. A learning platform, a learning suite, a learning ecosystem. There's a lot of different verbiage. Nobody has stamped the word down yet, so if you have any cool ideas, drop it into chat. So to reiterate, formal LMS, you're pushing from top down. Hey, take this course. Okay, sure, I'll take it. That's fine. There's a lot of elements that are missing. On this right side, you see how this is almost a full circle of coordination between people, engagement. It creates a system that becomes a part of the success and not just a, hey, this person took this course. We want to ensure that it's a part of your day-to-day activity and not a distraction from your day-to-day. And that's something that I kind of want to drive home. Right now, if people are saying, I don't have time to learn about stuff. I only have 40 hours in a week. Like, I know you needed me to take this course. I'm going to try to squeeze it in when I'm listening to Patrick talk about this webinar. I've got my other window up over here, and I'm just pressing the next button on my content. That's what an LMS kind of turns into. It turns into a distraction from the day-to-day, whereas a learning ecosystem is more of a part of the day-to-day.
Patrick, would you say this is part of the reinforcement model of learning? So instead of taking a single course and following it through and not thinking about it again, by adding experts and peers, you get to reinforce what you learn and see what's really important.
That is exactly right. Sorry, I forgot to introduce Rafi. He works with us here at Docebo. He's got some increased knowledge on this topic and will be chiming in from time to time. He doesn't have any special permission. He's not a special participant that just happened to be able to ask a question. He is working with us over here at Docebo, so my apologies for that. Yes, to answer your question, yes.
I just hacked my way in. I just hacked my way in.
He learns through our learning ecosystem how to get into our Adobe Connect call. So well done, sir, well done. All right, so moving on here. A lot of you might be familiar with the 70-20-10 model, and this is going to come back to whether or not we use a learning management system or a learning ecosystem. An LMS, if you're using an LMS, what that covers is this 10%. So 90% of your learning you can't even report on. That's concerning. That's concerning to me if I were to own a business. Like, you mean to be telling me I have a department that's learning 90% of their information completely outside of what we're using to manage it? That's where the problem lies, and that's what we need to ensure we're both capturing that learning and that we're able to report on it. We'll touch base on reporting later, but it is one of the most crucial elements of any learning management system. In regards to a 70-20-10 model, if you're not using it, I will say it's something that you should investigate. Companies who use it are 5 times more likely to attract talent. They are 4 times faster at implementing change, and they are 2 times more likely to report an increased motivation in staff. Quick differentiation here. We've talked about this before. Just a couple points that you might want to write down. An LMS is compliance-driven, whereas a learning platform, a learning ecosystem, is development-driven. I said we were going to talk about reporting. Here we are. Formal reporting, this is the options that you get, and it's certainly something that's widely available in the LMS industry. In regards to informal reports, that's the crucial component. You can't simply create content that you think is good and then not be able to report on it. We need to be able to show, hey, this course is doing really well. Nobody seems to be completing this course. Who's talking about this? Who's talking about that? And the reason being, if you're trying to, for instance, if you have an external use case for a learning system, i.e. I'm selling content, you want to know what your top seller is. You want to know why people are purchasing that course and what the engagement, like, hey, I see this course has a high level of engagement. There's a lot of discussions going on. Hey, turns out that it's also the course that we're selling the most of. Figure out correlations based on reports. It's not just enough to create the new content. We also need to be able to prove that it's working. This comes back to return on investment for internal use of a learning system versus increased revenue for an external use of a learning system. Next topic is about artificial intelligence, something that is increasingly popping up in the learning industry. We hear a lot about it at conferences, and certainly something that you guys probably hear about in the news, and it's becoming a part of our daily lives, so why not e-learning? So, quick poll here. I just want to understand how much of us are utilizing it already. Artificial intelligence is the utilization. Let's answer that question so you can answer this question. Artificial intelligence is basically using a computer to perform operations in a platform. Whether or not it's, let's say, automatically enrolling people into a course saying, hey, this is a new learner. I know that they should gain access to this course, and at week 2, I'm going to suggest to them to take a different course. So it's kind of a computer that talks to you. Think about the little Clippy on Microsoft Word as an instance of artificial intelligence. All right, so perfect. Thank you for your input here. Nice to know that people are using some AI already, but predominantly it's I'm not sure exactly what it is, or nah, it's not something that we're using. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how artificial intelligence can help us out. So there's 2 main concepts, and this is what certainly Docebo is focusing on. Not to say that there's an unlimited amount, but there are certainly more than 2 that can be utilized in the future. Ultimately, these are the 2 that we're focused on right now. So Crawling and analyzing content. What does that mean? It means that I've created some new content. Maybe a user has created some new content. They've created some social learning. Hey guys, I looked at this video. Let me share it with the team. What this AI is going to do for us is it's going to go through the video. It's going to actually watch the video and it's going to say, hey, this is actually about topic A, B, and C. I can label that topic, or I can label that learning object. I can create tags for it. I can create highlights for it. There's different aspects that are, this bot will save you time in the long run, or this artificial intelligence is going to be able to make sure that this content is pushed out to the correct people based on their analysis. That's kind of how it's tied together with the suggestion, which is the second side. I have an AI who tells me what courses to take. When I spoke about this with Donato and the guys yesterday, I was like, well, let's talk about Netflix. Netflix is similar to this, but it's not the same exact thing, right? Netflix, the analysis on Netflix is basically like, hey, somebody else watched this and they also like this. So like, here's your suggestion. The analysis for us is more around some user took this course last year when they were struggling to hit their KPIs. After taking this course, their KPIs were on par. They were getting their bonus checks every quarter. Now we have a completely new person, a year later, running into the same issue. Hey, my KPIs are dropping. The system's going to say, hey, John, I think you're doing a great job, but we could do better. Let's take this course. Here's your suggestion. User takes the course, boom, goes to the same system. Their KPIs go up. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe John's KPIs don't go up. The system's going to learn and it's going to adjust over time. Hey, that course didn't work. It's not working anymore. Maybe nobody will even take that course anymore. System's going to do a check. Okay, well maybe this other course is going to work for John. And it's going to continue to go through this loop and adjusting over time to ensure that the proper content is there when it's needed.
So Patrick, I think what we're seeing here is a convergence of different factors. One is new methods of learning, so mobile learning, micro-learning, social learning, and so on. And we need the artificial intelligence to help draw the lines, draw the patterns that we can't necessarily see ourselves. Would that be correct?
Exactly. You've got, when it comes to formal versus informal learning and content in general, there's going to be a ton more of informal, right? You have one system admin creating formal content, or maybe you have an integration with the content management system, so you can still generate a significant amount. That's nothing compared to how much content could be created at the informal level. You have 1,000 users in your platform. You have 10,000, maybe even 1 million users in your platform. Think about 10% of 1 million users sharing one asset a week. That would be an incredible amount of content that would be generated, but it's not going to do anything unless people are actually looking at it, right? We need to make sure that discussions are happening around it. So this AI is going to allow us to quickly analyze that content that's being generated on a weekly basis and then make it a part of, the day-to-day.
And I think what we're seeing are some surprising matches in that, let's say someone's KPI is dropping, and the artificial intelligence may be suggesting some really basic types of training, such as how to hold an effective meeting or active listening, that wouldn't necessarily be on the forefront of a manager's mind when they're assigning training courses in the old model.
Yeah, I mean, there's a better understanding of each individual user. It's going to sound a little weird, but like, the AI understands the user better than their manager, which is ultimately, it's true. I, as leader of the learning and support team here at Docebo, I feel like I have a decent understanding of my staff, but if they're in the learning management platform, like if they're in our internal platform, I don't necessarily know everything that they've done, and artificial intelligence might be able to do a better job than me at making suggestions there. So this is a little bit of a closer look at, sorry. Melissa, are you adjusting that? My apologies. This is a look at kind of how the tagging system will work in terms of analyzing on the Docebo side. This is something that we have been developing for about 2 years in regards to the artificial portion for Docebo. There's an immediate benefit to this. It's easier to find content, right? If I'm looking for a particular thing, whether or not it's a video on how to replace, what was it, some type of log splitter part, and it's tagged as log splitter, I can find that learning object much quicker. If it was just shared by Joseph, who's 10,000 miles away at a completely different office, I can quickly find his asset based on tags that have been automatically generated. There's also the long-term benefit, which is the suggestion side. There's not going to be an immediate suggestion, right? Because there needs to be an analysis done by the artificial intelligence to ensure that, hey, this course is useful for managing this gap. This course is useful for increasing morale. You know, there's a whole bunch of different reasons why a course is going to need time to be analyzed by AI, but ultimately once it is analyzed and once it's attributed to X, Y, and Z factors, then it can be pushed out to a learner. So when it comes to suggestions, there's a couple that I wanted to highlight. So we might make suggestions based on learning objectives. Hey, I want to learn about cascading style sheets, CSS. Well, you want to learn about that? Here's intro course about CSS. That's a pretty easy connection right there. But maybe there are other courses. Oh, if you want to learn about CSS, it's also important that you have some HTML knowledge. Let's make that suggestion. You've got the ability to utilize historical data for acquiring skills. So ultimately, this course allowed this user to gain this skill. Let me suggest that course. You've got performance data for KPIs. So this is what I referenced earlier. It could be learning style. Hey, this student likes micro-learning. They can't deal with courses that are 25 minutes long. They can only deal with a 5-minute course every other day. Might be a preferred channel. So Docebo's product allows for channels to be created, whether or not it's, I don't know, a sales channel versus a learning and development channel. There are certain patterns for particular users. It might make suggestions for that user based on what they like to use. Hey, I see you going into the sales channel a lot. Check out this asset. In terms of timeline, it's something that people allude to a lot in our industry. It's like, hey, artificial intelligence, it's a thing, but it's down the road. It's 5 years, it's 10 years. It's not. It is right around the corner. AI will be a part of Docebo in 2018. We'll expand upon it in 2019. We'll add new modules. Ultimately, it's going to grow into something larger. I'm kind of running a little short on time, so I wanted to give enough time for questions. We're at like 10 more minutes left, so I'm just going to run through these. Last thing, don't be worried about your job security in regards to AI. Ultimately, if you're managing the AI, it's going to save you time, and it's going to allow you to get promoted. Here's some of the reasons why. And then I'm just going to end with a thank you, and then we're going to hop straight into QA. So I've got a couple questions that have been brought to my attention. Let's see here. Could you please clarify the resource of your statistics? So for most of this was related to, I believe, Brandon Hall has a lot of this information, and then Josh, where is that slide?
Oh,
Yeah.
one back.
So Burson and Brandon Hall group.
Burson by Deloitte.
Next question. Maybe? Hey, Melissa, can you slide the questions thing over a little bit? It's good. It's actually cut perfect. How does the comment about third world relate to research in India where they put a computer in a wall and the kids learned how to program without any formal learning, i.e. through curiosity? Slide 16, okay?
I can address that a little bit. So I think what we're seeing in India is sort of the leapfrogging of technology. So yes, they might only have one screen in a classroom, but most of these students have some sort of mobile device. I don't know if they have smartphones, but they certainly have mobile devices, and that's where different types of learning is coming into play, such as micro-learning, such as the ability to surf and find mobile content on their phones, things like that. So I can't say we're an expert on this, but India is definitely a place where formal learning is being supplanted or supplemented by these modern ways of learning.
The article that I read earlier this morning, I think it was actually a research study or somebody's dissertation, but ultimately it was for people who were incredibly isolated. So when I say this, I mean like, you know, they don't have much, if not anything. They're in a small area. How can you get AI to work with your existing content? Does this mean purchasing another LMS? So ultimately, when it comes to AI working with your existing content, it's more about the current learning management system that you have and whether or not it has AI capabilities. So I'm certainly not going to say that AI isn't going to integrate with your current content, because it might be able to view your videos. If you were to bring your content into Docebo, for instance, and have an AI analysis done, the development hasn't been fully completed at this point, but you select, you know, an AI, like watch this content, analyze this content, tag this content. Yes, I don't think there's going to be any issues. It's not like you have to generate content after you've enabled AI. It's going to be able to look at your historical information as well. Will the AI technology only work with the informal side, or will it work for the formal? I would assume that it works for both. I am not directly on that dev team for AI, but it wouldn't make sense to not cover both spectrums. So certainly during use case testing and beta testing, that's something that they'll go through and make sure that it can do. What do you think of adaptive learning, e.g. Okay, so adaptive learning is very similar to AI, or it definitely has an AI component, if you ask me. So basically, the content changes based on, you know, what you're saying or how you're responding to the content. It's already a capability with SCORM, I believe. Right now, if you know, for instance, if you're asked a question, you get it wrong, they might, you know, show you a different set of slides versus somebody who gets it correct. So the content changes to you as an individual. I think it's fantastic. That's one step into the right direction, and I would utilize it if you have a chance. In this scenario,
If I can chip in on that too.
Go ahead.
Sorry, can I just address that? So with SCORM, it relies on the developer of the SCO to understand or anticipate all the different paths that a learner might take. So if you answer yes to question 1, you might go on down a certain path, a certain predefined path. If you answer no, you might go down another predefined path. The difference with adaptive learning, which again uses machine learning, which uses artificial intelligence to some degree, is the paths are unknown right from the beginning. So the artificial intelligence is always looking for additional content material that could be relevant, that may not have been known at the time that the first material was created. So that's the big difference. I hope everyone understands that. So we think there's a lot more potential certainly with adaptive learning than with the old style SCORM formal courses.
In the scenario of 10,000 people submitting content, who are those individuals? Are they part of the content development team, or are they workers in the field? Okay, so that is, yeah, those are your learners. Those are people who are not necessarily content developers, not necessarily admins. They're just in the system learning about topic A, B, and C, whatever it is. They found a cool video. They wanted to share it with the rest of their team. So this is more about ensuring that informal learning is a part of your company culture. So that's a topic that we didn't so much focus on right now because culture is kind of like a whole nother ballgame. But ultimately, we want to make sure that a company supports these people and encourages content to be generated from their own employees and not somebody who has a formal title as a learning and developing director or content creator. I'm going to do one more question, and then I think we're going to run out of time here. How does audio versus video versus text factor into modern learners? Okay, so I think this is a great question and certainly something that we kind of face from time to time when we're dealing with certain clients. Ultimately, the more modern the learner is, the more of a visual they typically want, but it's not like a cut and dry, yes, you want to be able to use video to encourage engagement. But I will say modern learners kind of were raised in that YouTube sensation. You know, there's a lot of millennials who are looking at YouTube videos to learn things. I don't necessarily, I can just give like an anecdotal thing. I installed a car rack on my car this weekend. I actually went over to my parents' house and did it with my father. I was struggling with the instructions. I was so close to looking online to find a video. I actually ended up looking online and I couldn't find it. If I would have found a video, I would have immediately dropped the instructions and just started watching the YouTube. So I would consider myself somewhat of a millennial, but certainly that's kind of up to your own user base, and it's something that the AI will be able to tell you. If you have, your sales group is primarily engaging with video, the AI will be able to tell you that versus a completely different sales group, let's say the support group, interacts better with text. Ultimately, you need to know that it's not going to be perfect for everybody, and your content needs to be able to adapt.
Yeah, I think the factor there is no matter what the format, is it quick and is it on point, is it contextual? So whether it's audio or video or text, I'm sure different people have different preferences. But I think the pattern that we're seeing is it has to be short, bite-sized, enough to learn what you need to do at that point in time, just like with the car stereo.
All right. Well, we've kind of reached the end of our time. I wanted to just give a quick thank you to everyone. Thank you to all, and thanks for the Docebo staff, and thank you again, Melissa, for helping us out.